And I think if this makes sense in terms of agenda for folks, we thought we might start off by just kind of having a little bit of a recap of the discussion. We've got like some confirmations that we want to make sure we know are in place for the canonical URL change and the sequencing of some of our releases. And then we thought it might make sense to have like a little bit of a discussion around 2.0 publishing. Like we've started to have that in the past, but we just haven't really gotten into the nitty-gritty yet. With the second half being a focus on improving the profiles to remove, QA errors. Finney, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sheridan. And I don't know if this might be appropriate for the 2.0 discussion. We're wondering as well, if we could maybe chat a little bit about best practice in terms of the IG, the publication and simplifier, so that, you have different versions, and making sure that when people are looking at the profiles, that it's actually pointing to the profile that was released for that IG versus, when you're developing as well. So I don't know if it's making sense to you.
I think so. Like I think it probably might tie in well to this piece. It may not have a one-to-one, but do you mean like how to make sure that if we've got maybe like we've released, I don't know, probably 10 packages in the past, like is your question more around like how can we ensure that folks who are going to be looking at, our most recent bug fix and our soon to be minor and major releases navigate to the right, like know where to go for the right thing?
Yeah, so for example, they have an IG that's say version 1.0.0, and now we're continuing to develop. So we're making changes, whether we put it in simplifier or something else or another project or something else, so that when they actually click on a link to look at the profile for a resource, for example, a patient, that it actually points to the same version that the one that got released on the version 1.0.0.
Yeah, so I think we can probably we may have to like talk about a little bit abstractly in the sense where simplifier will have a slightly different approach to this than IG publisher, but let's talk about it. So I'll add it in to kind of have around this discussion. Let me see if I can just add in the question, which is how do we ensure that our iGuides let's say our versioned iGuides point to the equivalent version profiles. So,
yeah, in the context of the simplifier specifically.
All right. I'll put simplifier versus IGP because I think, yeah, sorry.
Can you also add a note there so that we make sure that in the iGuides, we tell people how they're to tell the difference between versions of an instance that they receive.
So this would be like adding a note into the iGuide?
There needs to be some discussion or consideration as to how one does that.
All right.
How do I know that I'm receiving a 1.1, not a 1.0?
Yes. And the instance discussion is somewhat a separate discussion from what was just brought up here in the first piece.
Right. That's why I was just saying if we could just make a note to make sure that we address that at some point in time.
Yeah.
So version,
we originally said we were going to have a separate call to discuss that in more detail, and we didn't.
Yeah, I was going to do a bit of a presentation on those sorts of things, but I haven't got around to prepping for it.
Yeah. It might be
tempted to say
on a profiles call.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe target for coming profiling call. So that's a dedicated call. Yeah, because my goal would be, I'm really hopeful that we can get through a lot of our challenges today with the profiles so that we could start opening up our profiling calls to do discussions beyond invariants. But let's see how far we can get today. But I'm just going to put like I'm going to highlight it because maybe something that we just have to make sure we get on schedule. All right. So with that in mind, I think just kind of kicking off recap with our release sequencing that we discussed previously. Elliot, thank you for reviewing the PR on the sub value sets. The change that we'd put in, I think it was the last profiling call. I made the modification that was requested. I think it's just we're awaiting kind of final review and merge. And as soon as that's complete, we'll be able to make 1.1.8, which was a kind of, this is a bug fix to provide that the sub value set, the pass-throughs that we've been discussing. And I don't think there's any other.
Does everyone on this call know that PR means pull request?
So it's specifically it's when somebody who is editing against say our master or our source of truth, and like you folks don't want me to just like be able to make an edit carte blanche. We've developed a process where basically I say, oh, I'm requesting someone to review my code changes, and
I just didn't think everyone here knew the abbreviation. That's all.
No, that's super helpful. And we've been having a lot more people raise their hand for community editing. So it is a really helpful, I think, clarification point. So, and I did actually I don't know if Interpol's on the line. I reviewed the pull request that he had put in earlier for a example fix in medications. So we're moving with the goal of kind of keeping things for this upcoming bug fix, very much in this space of, not breaking changes, no major changes, no minor changes. The really big focus is just on clarity and intent, with our hope being some of the things that we've been discussing around like fixing up our invariants and like fixing some of the things that are genuinely broken, being much more oriented around kind of this 1.2, a much larger release. But I know folks were kind of waiting on getting those sub value set dependencies in place. So we're going to try to break these up. And then last time on our governance call, we just discussed, basically saying, hey, let's get these changes in because they are really, really important. And we know that the move towards canonical and the broader kind of QA that we want to accomplish for cleanup prior to balloting is going to take a long time. And so separating out this kind of major release that will have our new canonical URL and some of the kind of overall improvements from, can we just make sure that if folks are utilizing some of the content this summer with the old URLs, that those changes are in place. So if they want to have a little bit more time before making the migration to the new 2.0, they can ensure that they're working off of a version that doesn't have glaring issues with it. Is the goal. So from what we've talked about, this was kind of the recap of where we're sitting with kind of upcoming release sequencing. Like, does this make sense to folks? Are there questions that you have? I should modify this one too. It's observation, advice, and variance. Turns out when we looked, there's actually more issues than just the allergy ones. Luckily, they're all similar. Okay. We don't have dates for this right now because we said we wanted to get this done before we really even start thinking about 2.0. But my hope would be if we can focus on the profiling, get some back-to-back sessions in, we could be able to put out a 1.2 sometime in July, if not earlier. If we've got some folks that are happy to help with the secondary reviews. All right, so that's a recap. A little bit of a recap on the canonical URL front. So I think we talked about this last governance call, just that we know we're moving towards a different canonical. We know that we have to move towards a different canonical. We have an established HL7 candidate.ca domain now that we can use towards our canonical base. We know our comms plan. I've got the actual forum right up for the first initial post telling folks, hey, we're moving towards this change. This is what you can anticipate the new canonical base will be. You'll be able to, delay the, or choose when you move to the new canonical using versioning. That's all written up. And we know we'll have to put in some kind of reminders over time. But before I put out the announcement on the forums, I wanted to actually confirm that I knew the full canonical base, because we knew this will be the new domain. But I don't know if we ever really confirmed whether or not we wanted it to be FHIR/baseline or FHIR/base. with and here's like two expressions of like how that would show up. So in some places, baseline is very clear, like if you're talking about the actual implementation guide, and then profiles, it may be less clear, because they don't have obviously baseline in the actual URL, unless it's further up in the base. So I think, we've always said in the guide, there is a difference between base and baseline and core, and we sit somewhere between a base and a core. But I didn't want to just make a decision without consulting you guys on how you wanted this to look before we put it out into the announcement. Their preferences? Or is there an alternative to this?
It might be easier to so when we're talking about core, it would be exactly the same except for base or baseline will be replaced with core, correct?
Well, I think
And
it
then
depends on maybe where core is in the life cycle, right? So we know what core is being developed right now. Core's canonical URL is based in the other pan-Canadian URLs that we have, CA, InfoWay, InfoRoute, FHIR, just like PSEA is right now.
Yeah, those are proprietary ones. But once they become standards, they would be the hl7canada.ca URL, correct?
I think that's the underlying goal. We have to make the runway for what that looks like and what the canonical change would mean for folks.
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion between baseline and base. One's shorter, but we've been referring to everything as the Canadian baseline.
Mm-hmm.
The only nuance is the way in which we use this concept of baselining. So to say it's a base, okay, to say that it's baseline suggests that it's been baselined, if you know what I mean. It's not just a sort of a foundational thing, but actually there's been due diligence done around it. But that's just a semantic nuance. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and we haven't been applying that. We've been using baseline for 3 years now. So
yeah. And I had a look, because the only reason I was like, oh wait, so it is slightly different than obviously some other folks are putting out base and core. And I wanted to know, with the implementation guide registry, would it impact us? Was the canonical base being used to determine, is it a national base or not otherwise? And so I actually just looked, and it looks like the classification isn't determined by what goes into that URL, which is good. It means that we can still be the baseline because that's how we've communicated ourselves, and still be found amongst kind of other kind of similar guides. So we can see here we are amongst many of the bases now. So I don't actually think that there's a technical difference that this will.
No, I agree.
I would tend to using baseline just for consistency, simplicity. We're calling it CA baseline. Now I would question though, whether we want FHIR there. Or whether we want something in addition to FHIR. If we think about sort of how this, how our domain may play out, do we see, would we want hl7canada.ca/ig/baseline? Or will we be hosting a terminology server at hl7canada.ca/FHIR/terminology or /terminology, or what?
I would think in that case it would be /terminology, but that doesn't preclude us using /FHIR for when we mean FHIR. I don't think IG should be that high up in the URL.
Yeah, given that IGs tend to be singular to methodologies, I would suggest it be /FHIR/IG.
Yeah.
If you want to do that.
Yeah,
But we already have the implementation guide in here.
I agree with
Well,
FHIR too. I think we should have FHIR prior to baseline. instead of IG.
And so these are all variations. So I heard that we like having FHIR higher up. You know, if it would look like this versus,
Okay, sorry, the thing you just typed though, what is that? What is the thing being referred to there?
this one.
Yeah,
So this would be, if we were to phrase it like this would be of the HL7 Canada FHIR I guides, this is the baseline guide.
okay, that's not the way you do it in FHIR though, right?
So this
You
would
could do
be the
FHIR
option.
slash
Yeah.
implementation guide slash reference the implementation guide.
No, so this would be the base canonical for the implementation guide website. So just like the first highlighted line above is HL7.Canada FHIR baseline implementation guide, the center or any of these would be followed by slash implementation guide.
You mean like that?
No. So, can I
Actually, it
find
would be a, yeah,
I think it definitely needs to keep FHIR in that line because that tells us what we're talking about in the first place.
and it's a FHIR implementation guide, not a CDA implementation guide.
Exactly.
So we'd like FHIR.
Do we need IG to
as
separate
distinct
it from
implementation guide.
So after baseline or base or whatever, that's all determined by the IG itself.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding in the hierarchy how baseline here is relevant. Maybe I'm just missing it.
Okay, just a second.
Actually, Paul, I think you're correct because the baseline part is the reference for the baseline implementation guide. And I'm not sure.
And other
I guess-
implementation guides may inherit or
Yes.
implement or whatever, but they themselves would point to what they're implementing.
Yes, I'm just trying to think. I was just about to think it through in terms of the canonical URL for a profile within a base profile within the baseline implementation guide.
So that one looks like this. Sorry, I was just actually trying to pull up another country's example. So this would be how it could look if we had profile allergy intolerance at the end.
If that was if
So hang on, go back. That didn't make sense to me.
This one?
yeah,
No,
the structure definition one looks right to me.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
right, because that was from the baseline guide. So the top
Yes.
one would not in fact call baseline out, because if you're doing it from a hierarchy perspective, it's defining baseline,
So
not that it's derived from.
within the baseline IG, there is an implementation guide resource. Right? There's your implementation guide website, and there's also the implementation guide resource. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that first line with implementation guide in it is the resource.
Okay, but then it would not.
And we're talking about what goes above that.
And you've named it with an URL. I mean, you could have. That's its ID.
It's the canonical for the implementation guide resource.
A canonical path, or just the identifier of the ID.
Well, hopefully the two are the same.
But they aren't, because one begins HTTP and the other one just begins HL7.FHIR.
No, that's the ID.
I know, that's what I said.
HL7.FHIR.ca.baseline.
Yeah, no, we're talking about the
Specifically what I was
canonical
asking about.
URL.
So the ID of that implementation guide resource is in fact HL7.FHIR.ca.baseline.
You're talking about this? This is our,
Yeah, that.
yes, I think this is what's pulled from like, this is our current package and how it's expressed in our current build.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
I'm trying to do two things at once. So one, I'm putting a response, Thomas, in the chat. This is when you had asked, like defining the definitions of baseline terms, that's in the chat. If you want to have a look there, see if that makes sense. So I'm trying, going back to the other kind of conversation. So I think we've agreed that we don't want IG before FHIR, right? We don't like, oh, is it gonna let me strike through? Okay. Is there an alternate, Elliot? You had started to describe, maybe putting it in the chat, to what this would look like with an IG somewhere in between.
It would go between FHIR and baseline.
So it would look like this. This one?
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to also pull up, like some of the countries that I've seen, they have like this FHIR/, and like if you were to navigate to their base, let's just see if we can pull up Italy's base real quick. Or maybe we'll just, hold on. This is, I think, their labs one. They don't typically use like, they don't like incorporate IG there, but if you were to go higher up in the hierarchy, we're starting to see like a lot of people have these kind of landing pages for like any of their guides that are published this way under like this.
Yeah.
And so I think it's
Okay,
like
there's an
more consistent
IG
to
right.
have IG.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you'd put IG there if you're going to have the definite, if you're going to have implementation guide to being an element in
Because they're completely separate things.
the things being.
So the URL that you see there just under home, that is the canonical URL for the lab report implementation guide resource. It's not for the, which doesn't necessarily have to do anything with the implementation guide website.
That's why this URL is different than this one. And if we go to our baseline real quick,
That is a URI.
we have this one, which we know obviously has to change, but like, right, we've got, well, the things that matter in this instance are here. And so I think this is
And I
just
think in particular, we're talking about the canonical URL for the resources, correct?
correct.
The website is the second question, but
Okay.
what we've been trying to get solid is the canonical URL for our resources, be they the implementation guide resource or contained resources that are within that implementation guide, such as profiles, etc.
So I'm keen to keep the canonical URL clean and not put IG in it, purely based on just patterning.
Okay.
So if we have like a good rationale for like wanting to have IG introduced upstream, like for a technical purpose in the canonical, again, that I'm only speaking from a patterning perspective, but I don't want to shut down the conversation. I think we heard we don't like this, so we can strike these. Are we comfortable with this? Is anyone not uncomfortable? Is anyone not comfortable with this? And then we'll talk about the website.
Yeah, I can go with it.
And that will go out in the announcement on the forum for the examples. Okay, do we think, so I actually think the website one is maybe a trickier issue because it probably also has to do with like domain and hosting. Do we think that we can confirm, and do we think we need to tell people right now, like the new website would be built, like, or it wouldn't be build.fire.org, but it would be like hl7canada.ca / whether it's fire baseline or IG. Do we need to make that decision right now for folks to prepare?
We do need to make sure that if you use a canonical URL for a resource, whether it be a profile or a value set or anything else, that it resolves.
Yeah. So
But that's a slightly separate question.
That it could resolve, not that it need resolve.
That it could resolve. It's ideal if it does.
So, and the easiest way to do that is to make the canonical website http://hl7canada.ca/fire/baseline/index.html.
Yes.
Or at least that would be the homepage for the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. And there's things we can do in terms of paths and redirections and subdomains and things if we have to, but all of which are fully manageable.
All right. So are we feeling good about this then? Like right now, we would anticipate we'd be moving forward with this. We can include it in the announcement if folks wanted it. And we'll just have to kind of get to work on this piece. Is anyone not?
Right, because you're essentially defining here that it's that HL7 artifacts for FHIR would be stored under or referenced under http://hl7canada.ca/fire/project/whatever.
Page, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that somebody doing labs using baseline would do /baseline/labs. They should do /fire/labs.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now hl7canada.ca.
Now, when we announce the canonical URL, we should also say that we expect that a website is to follow, but that's at a later date.
All right. Happy? Does that make sense to folks?
That's good.
All right, cool. Then I
good.
will update my write-up
Sorry.
and post it.
Sorry for that. Just slow memory here. Could you repeat again what exactly the canonical URL here? It's just before the index. There's a backslash there.
So this is the website. I'm just gonna draw.
Could you just repeat? Just write down exactly the canonical URL.
Well, the canonical
clear.
URL will depend on which resource we're talking about.
While here we talk about the canonical URL for this baseline IG package.
There is no canonical URL for a baseline package.
Well, we have one. We need one for the package.
No, it
No,
does not exist.
On the
Thank you.
registry, my understanding may be wrong. On the FHIR registry, we needed that canonical URL for the
We need a
package.
canonical URL for the implementation guide resource, but not for the package. That's a different statement.
So that's this.
That is only for the implementation guide itself. The package is different, including the implementation guide, all those profiles included in the, maybe I'm wrong, on the FHIR registry website. That's where I go there. I went there and download those package.
So, yep. So, but I think the point that Elliot is making is around specifics, which is So you've got your package ID, and your package ID is this.
Yep.
You've got like the file that is your implementation guide. So it's like the content that exists across this, like if you were to go to downloads, right? In our webpage, maybe actually find the downloads.
Correct. The package though would
Yeah,
have a
you'd be able
different.
to get like the entire specification, and it would be resolvable at that canonical URL as well. And then each of the resources, so if you're talking about like allergy, will also have a canonical URL. And so
Yeah.
all of the implementation guide and all of the resources and any value sets, anything, any artifacts we publish will share this canonical base.
Yeah, that's the canonical URL for the package, and that the rest will follow the canonical URL route to give the actual path, just as it showed here. Implementation guide, structure definition, to go down this path avenue to find all those different individual identified profiles or resources. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. Just want to clarify. This is the canonical URL route for this baseline package. Thank you. Just want to make sure. Thanks.
Yeah, so it's
And-
just in being specific, it's the canonical URL route for any of the baseline artifacts. But we won't say package because package means something else as well. Is that what you were going to say, Elliot?
Well, and actually, I was gonna say, I just grabbed the baseline package, opened it up, and yes, there is a canonical in it. And it would be hl7canada.ca/FHIR/baseline.
Like this, or oops, one like this.
Nope. Get rid of the last part and the slash. And the slash, yeah.
Oh, and wait,
And-
hold on.
Yep, right. No, without the slash. And that is what is in the package itself, or will be in the package itself. So I misspoke. I'm sorry.
Okay. This is canonical URL for the implementation guide. And then for the profiles, for a profile. And then that IG registry that Thomas was referring to. So that is what is the kind of that host of our package, our guide, our web page contents. Oddly enough, I think because of the way that we're not publishing officially through HL7 Canada today, you can get our CI build and it'll recognize that we have public comments, but it just, I think, downloads the actual kind of package materials, the TGZ file, rather than linking out to the actual like formal guide page that we have for those releases, because we've never actually published a separate, like a true separate guide. We've only packaged the materials and called that a 1.0 and a 1.1. So hopefully the goal will be that when we do go to 2.0, that we have an actual, like, this is not going to live on build.fhir.org. It's going to be, you know, HL7 Canada FHIR baseline, and then it'll have like our version details as a version guide. So it'll basically not have to be CI build forever. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to take squeeze of water between slides. All right. So in thinking about publishing, we have kind of one more topic area, which is to think through, like, you know, to date, just like I pulled up here, we have published our profile. Like, we have a single source of truth, which is GitHub. And that single source of truth feeds our simplifier project, So that would be CA baseline. And a IG publisher guide that lives on the internet. As we prepare to think about, how do we get to this point where we're not only exposing a single build, and we've got like this kind of static thing over time that lives as a ballot version guides, we started having conversations about like, do we have to change, or do we have to start coming up with what's our process going to be for like actually publishing formally? I think Ron, you're on. I know you were kind of less like we know how to do this in Simplifier to date, right? Like we can do version guides, but because we're looking to publish through HL7 Canada formally, I think the goal was to be able to use formal HL7 international tools, right? Am I summarizing that incorrectly? Is Ron still on? It might be on mute, Ron. And so what I'll say is like, if we're operating under that assumption that we're going to continue having like a formal IG publisher guide and ensuring that our profiles are hosted in the, that we have to actually figure out like, are there sign-offs or like, is there like what the process will start to be for us to ensure that we can have this hosted on hl7canada.ca
There you
and
go.
it's
Yeah.
pushed through the process.
So sorry, I've had many windows to weed through to find my Zoom meeting again. Yeah, so Graham is absolutely lobbying, of course, for use of the tooling for us to produce our things in. But the question for us then was, you had asked this a while back, which I haven't got clarification from anybody on yet, because it's kind of tough to pin that down. I think I sent a note to Ruben, but I don't think Ruben's able to answer the question, which is, are we able to use, the little, the formal logos and everything else for that purpose in our specifications? Can we use our, our Canadian FHIR specifications? So don't have an answer to that question yet, but this will prompt me to go back and ask the question again, which I think is what you're asking me for. Yes?
No, not, yeah.
No?
Go ahead, Elliot.
So I think there's a couple of things here. There's the question of getting rights to various HL7 IP.
Yeah.
But we've also got the question of, do we continue to use Simplifier, or do we use IG Publisher and post on the new HL7 Canada website, which we would need to manage. And one of the things Simplifier is a lower barrier to entry for IG authors. IG Publisher is, my feeling is, it's a more rigorous tool. It will be kept up to date with the way HL7 wants things done and all of those sorts of things. So we would be more in line with HL7's practices by using IG Publisher. But it's going to be more effort to do that.
Yes, I agree with that.
Although it is consistent with the rising number of groups who are using FHIR shorthand into GitHub and then calling the publisher and then deciding whether they need to then connect their GitHub repositories into Simplifier to also publish on Simplifier.
That's curious. Yeah, technically that's not a question I can answer per se. I think the principle as you've outlined it is correct. I mean, the challenge that I've had as I talk to people from different times is there's varying degrees of confidence in the IG publisher as it exists right now. And I think, and it's not just incidental. I mean, there are others that are doing it. Secondly, you're right. The barrier to being able to stand it up is much more so than Simplifier. Simplifier is much easier. However, Simplifier is also, I believe, still quite expensive. So I don't know. I'll have to talk to Graham about this because I mean, basically, if we're expecting to do this and we make a decision to do it, I would want to know that where the IG publisher is at now is industrial quality. And I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
It's not.
it's
It's not.
getting better. But the other consideration is for guides in other families like CDA and V2,
Yeah.
they're increasingly using the IG publisher approach to publish. Like it or not.
Yes.
I'm not
Yes,
so sure
correct.
that
Yeah.
I'm keen about that, but that's the reality.
Yeah, things are
So-
definitely moving in that direction.
So given if we're looking for consistency across publications, and I know we're not actively developing CDA stuff right now, but we do have some. And we may very well want at some point to develop some V2 guidance because it's still going to be around. I know we're not doing that actively right now, but I wouldn't want to close the door to us publishing those standards in a consistent way with what we do for our FHIR standards.
That's true.
I'm just, because I think we probably can't get to an answer on some of this today. I'm
Yeah, I
wondering
don't
if
think
we
we
can
can.
maybe like, so like there is a evaluation of the tool itself. But also,
Yeah.
I think like I have a really big blind spot for like, what is the actual process if you are using the tool? If you want to
Mhm.
publish through this formally. And so like, I guess maybe like, are there volunteers that say like, I'm interested in this enough to say like, I will look into a portion of this, or I will reach out to, I think I showed like the Italy guide, like folks who are trying to do this through their affiliate in other countries, that can maybe do a little bit of kind of collaborative investigation. And bring
I
it.
have tried to use the publishing mechanism within IG Publisher. It's not easy, but I keep coming back to this, that IG Publisher delivers the expectations that HL7 is building up around the communities.
From technical perspective, I do second Elliot his word. And
Mhm.
from business perspective, maybe I'm not qualified in that avenue. When the company or institute would like to procure some product, they want to go to commercial way.
Yes.
And IG Publisher is a grassroots community-based product. It's an open source.
Mhm.
I personally do like it as a technical person, but from business perspective, it's not as trustable as simplify.net. Even I know there's quite a lot of issues there from simplify.net FHIR engine, especially their validation engine. There's quite a lot of issue there, but it's commercial product.
Yeah, gotcha. And actually, so I really appreciate this conversation because I have the ability to go back. This actually, the issue around the IG Publisher and this idea of, being commercial quality, if you will, is a serious consideration. And it's actually a consideration that probably will bubble up to the board level in terms of direction to the organization. So I will,
The other piece of that, and for taking that up the line is, and this has come up many times, and I forget what the Canadian equivalent is of it, but the equivalent of the 508 compliance. Lots of countries and jurisdictions are requesting that in the publisher, but it's not true now. Now, one of the things about Simplifier is that InfoWay pays for a certain number of projects for active editing, which isn't the same thing as the number of published guides. Right. So it depends upon whether you're developing your guide locally and then publishing to Simplifier. I don't think that counts as a project in terms of the licensing costs, but we have run into that issue about getting close to the number of projects that InfoWay's paid for in Simplifier. So there's that, because up to now, those of us who are using projects in Simplifier are using InfoWays licensing. The jurisdictions aren't currently, to my knowledge, paying for their own, although I don't know about Ontario. But my understanding is it's all under InfoWays license right now.
Yeah, and I don't think that would be a concern that like we would be told, oh, like we're running out, so baseline can't publish. I mean, that we're already a project today.
Oh, for the yeah, not for the baseline, but for other projects publishing in there in terms of our recommendations about publishing processes. We have been told that in the past.
I think Joni's done some communication around like archiving, so the things that aren't being actively updated to have them in like accessible cold storage versus like it's a different storage mechanism. But I mean, every avenue that I have a conversation with, I encourage people to publish their content so it's accessible in the Canadian Fire Registry. I haven't heard anything counter to that.
Yeah, what we were doing at InfoWay is anything that hasn't been touched in where there's no like material updates other than like adding a project member or something like that, is a candidate to be archived. We don't just archive without asking anybody. We send messages out to the administrators of the project and say, hey, you haven't done any work on this in the last X amount of time. Can we archive it?
But that's archiving the project, not archiving the published instance in Simplifier, because they're two different things. Because the published instance needs to live. You might not be updating something much once you published it.
Yeah,
but the project itself can be archived. That's
the project being archived just means that you can't make any changes to it. So anything that's been published through that project is still there. It's still, you can still access the project to read it and to view it.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's like a different class of seats, basically, is how I've understood it. Because I've had projects that got archived because we haven't touched them in 4 years. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're a little off topic. I took the bait there. So like Ron, you said broader conversation here. Elliot, maybe in a follow-up call, could you like talk us through the process so we have a better understanding of like that publishing mechanism so it can kind of inform our thoughts on this?
Yeah.
And Elliot, do you want me to try to drag John into this conversation?
As somebody who's felt the pain, or as a representative of?
As someone who's felt the pain and done the process with his project hat on, not with his TSC hat.
That would be great.
I would like that. So here's what I've done. I've just created a note for myself to add to the board retreat a conversation. And the way I framed it is, because this is where the good place to do it, moving the HL7IG publisher to commercial level quality, stability, and maintenance.
I'm not sure. Sorry.
And
I'm not sure right now from the FHIR international level, what's the progress about the stated called the FHIR Foundry? I have no idea. So
there's a FHIR Foundation and then a FHIR Foundry, or two
Foundry.
Two different things. Foundry? Yeah. The Foundry is really a space for you to be able to, well, right now, one of the primary things it does is it allows you to access reference implementations done for a lot of different environments. So really as a starter, if you will, or a starting set of things to consider. Now there's other things the Foundry does, but it's got a huge catalog of content in it, which can be added to, by the way, by candidate if you choose. That's sort of where that's at. So it's not,
and it's a variety of open source contributions.
Correct.
Not just reference implementations, other kinds of implementations.
Correct. There are other kinds of implementations as well. Yeah. So, but it is not intended, the Foundry will not be addressing the issue of publication. It's really a place for discovery and potential utilization of different assets to speed people's ability to implement what they need to.
Thank you.
It's essentially a collection of Docker images.
Yeah, really it is. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, actually, it's based on my understanding from quite a long time, their Dev Day video, they shared I think there's some kind of a, how to see that redefinition of their boundary work. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Ron and I are speaking from what they presented at the working group meeting in May
Yeah.
in terms of the current state of the foundry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this
Yeah.
update. That's it's not really, for me, not really, how to see, encouraging news, but we'll have to bear with this one. I like this open source, but not the really the company organization like it as what I did.
So, we've got 5 minutes left. I've got these things for topics for a future call. We didn't get to profiling today. We could stay. I don't know if folks would want to stay for 30 additional minutes. I think these we'll have to kind of keep as items for next call. Maybe we can coordinate a time for, let's see, the next governance call. So our next profiling is the 28th. I know some folks have the holiday, some folks do not. So I will be on the profiling call chatting about invariance, because we do need to chat about invariance to anyone who's interested in. And the next governance is the 5th. I will not be on the 5th, but maybe this is like, that would be a great topic if Lorraine, John, Elliot, to bring towards like the governance and just say, hey, we'll talk you through what the process has been like, what some of the pros and cons has been. I think Mike can open up the call. I'll confirm with him. Does that make sense to try to target this one for the 5th?
For the 5th.
I'll ask John, but Elliot's schedule is most important.
I'm just looking for it. Yeah, I could do something in 2 weeks, sure.
All right, I will let Mike know, and he'll get the Zoom all opened up for everybody. And then you guys will just kick it off. I think that will be the focus for the next governance one. All right. So do folks want to stay on 30 extra minutes to talk about invariance fixes? I think there is a broader question that we have after we spent quite a time modeling the invariance, but like I actually went back and I tried to figure out how some of this came about and realized that like some of the invariants that we have that we're running into errors now came from US Core. And since the US Core and other cores have changed their stance, so I think there's like a broader conversation we should be having around, well, we can fix it, but do we want to fix it or do we want to like change our approach?
Yeah, the broader conversation is probably not appropriate for an extended call. I have another call at the top of the hour, so
Yeah, I
won't
need
be
to
there.
jump too.
So this is what we'll have as like our big, like we've got this question and some fixing questions across a number of different resources. So that will be our big topic for the 28th. And just kind of going through explicitly like where we're seeing some of the changes that occurred over time. There's probably the like one of these that is actually just like a technical improvement that we can do. I just have one other question, just confirming, because I've got 3 minutes. There's a text thing that came about. Let me show you it on the device profile, and I just want to make sure people are comfortable with me removing it. So we were getting like a lot of errors that like, oh, some hyperlink in the text div wasn't like resolving. And this is a carry through from when we used to like have to take the entire generated profile with the snapshot and load it back. I'm keen to just remove this because it's literally just the tables that are outdated for changes that we've made, resolve the errors, and just have a consistent approach moving forward. It also means that we don't have to continuously update this, which would be great. Does anyone have any like concerns about that? If you remove like 25 errors, which would be great.
None at all.
All right, then I will make those changes, and those will be in before the 28th, before our next conversation re-invariance.
I'm sorry, you want to remove the text element?
No, just this piece right here, basically like when IG Publisher, like when you run your profile through IG Publisher
Oh, yeah.
and you pull the JSON, it gives you like this text populated. It's a table with your choices in the profile at that point in time and a snapshot. And when we removed snapshots from our process, we removed the snapshots, but missed that we were like, that this was the other thing that IGP adds on that we didn't remove at the same time.
Well, yeah, but you don't
okay.
want to move the text element. You just want to remove the div inside the text element.
Well, if we
I
don't have a
think it's a
div, we don't
required
really
element,
need
isn't it?
for Stata. Yeah, we don't really need any of this.
Yes, well, you need the element. You just don't need the contents.
Yeah,
Wait a
Let's
second here,
hold,
you-
let's hold on this. We
Yeah.
don't have time in 2 minutes to discuss, actually. There's some
Mhm.
complications here.
Okay. All right, then I will keep it on the slide for conversation next time. All right, thanks, folks.
Yeah.
I will let you folks off to enjoy the nice little summer heat wave we're having and see you folks next week.
Excellent.